Good afternoon. How's everybody? Good?
Good.
Good to see all you smiling faces. Usually when I come on, everybody's frowning. Christina,
Hey,
you got a job yet?
I did. I signed the contract yesterday. They sent everything over. I start training spring break week, the first week of April, and then I go back to my school for a week, and then I'm coming to Raleigh for Charter One University, and then I'll come back, and then we're gonna build a school. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So now I guess you'll be ready to go into the doctoral program in the fall now, since you've got your job.
Listen, I'm building a school. We have to wait for a little bit.
Okay, now we're ready for you to be rolling now.
We're building a school. This is I signed my contract yesterday, and I checked my email this morning. There was like 50 emails from the school, and we have to hire this and we have to do that. So it was intense.
But that's the life of the administrator, but that's what you're all training to do. So, no crying in baseball, no crying in school administration. You signed on for this.
I know my district was very nice on day one when I told them that I was waiting on the offer. And then when I got the offer, it was like a switch went off and everyone like, okay.
Yeah, I told you. That's what happens. Yeah, you used to be. You has been like me now.
Listen, I was so important to them before, but now they don't even care about me.
No. And if you died on the job, they'd throw you out of the way and get somebody else. You always got to remember.
They don't even have a teacher to replace me, but they're just like, okay, when are you going to leave? Oh, okay. Oh, all right. I'm ready.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. So my interview went well, Dr. Lamb.
I was getting ready to ask.
It went well, and I believe I should be hearing soon about getting to the second round. Well, there will be district office people, and then I have another interview Tuesday for my current school that I'm in. So different district, two job interviews.
Good. Well, you're prepared. You know what to do.
Yep, and this one I have to do a presentation for, so.
They're going to make you do a little data dive?
And I have a choice of doing leadership or school climate. I can just there was a couple of questions and I can present my thoughts on how to do those, to improve. What would I try to do to build the relationships or improve morale? And then there's a 30-minute question session, and then I get a 10-minute time to ask them questions.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you're going to do climate, make sure you check out the North Carolina Teacher Working Conditions Survey.
Yes.
Because that's what it is. It's a climate survey, and it has all the different functions of climate on it and all the kind of questions that they ask. So, it's a roadmap to what you should do.
Okay. Perfect.
So check that one out. That'd be a good one. Now, if you're going to do a leadership survey, without highlighting the religious aspect, which you don't have to. It's not. Maxwell's 21 Laws of Leadership.
Okay.
Pick a couple of those. He has 21 laws, and they're really simple and they're relatable to everybody. They're really good for interview sessions.
Okay.
If you're doing a presentation, pick a couple of Maxwell.
Okay.
John Maxwell, 21 Laws of Leadership. You'll get that book, by the way, in 605 or in 730, whichever y'all are in next. You'll get that, and so. It's pretty easy. I like the law of the lid, the law of legacy. It's really easy, understandable stuff that you can talk to. It works across all levels, whether it's educators or civilians or central office people. It's the most common. When we do the shorthand, when we do that cram session, that 12-hour block for the EDCI doctorals to get them ready. and we do weekly classes plus weekends. That's what we use with them.
Gotcha.
We don't have time to. I mean, we don't have time to start them from the history of leadership back, Kurt Lewin all the way through Redden and all those, and Hershey and Blanchard and North House. We don't have time for all that. So we just cut to the chase and go straight to Maxwell.
Yeah, I was thinking about doing climate because we actually are probably going to have about a third of our teachers leaving.
Yep.
It's time.
Yeah, and so climate would be good. I mean, that's what the cap is what we'll start kind of the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
That kind of sets up what we'll talk about, tonight is before we get to case studies. Sandra's group's going to go first, and
All right.
Alicia's going to go last. But before we get started on that, but good luck to you. If you need anything, let me know.
Thank you.
Let me share my screen and let's look at where we are. I'm continue to be very pleased with how you're doing on your evidence work. Your scores are great. Remember, we can't focus all of our time on evidence work. We got a lot of other things, just like these case studies, these activities. I mean, I don't want to in any way imply that the evidences aren't important, but I'm telling you, there's we got to hit a lot more stuff. And so I'm very pleased. There's no but or and coming. I'm very pleased with what you're doing. Let's look at where we are. Next week, we're going to do personnel. Dr. Sain's going to lead that group. And then I'll do facilities, and then we'll have an Easter break. You'll do your last case study, which is EC, which you know how involved that one's going to be. Now, that last case study is a bear. It's a bear. Gosh, it's got so many parts and pieces, inclusion model, parent complaints, researching all the laws, best practices, all that stuff. Now, that last one, I'm just going to tell you, that's why I make sure you have a week off before that, because it's a bear to get all that stuff together. It touches everything that we've touched in the MELS program so far, in the MSA program, is in that last case study. Everything. Just like those long-term goals in your skip in task 1, those parent meetings, this is where you would plug one of them in, those mad parents that don't know anything about the inclusion model. Test scores, professional development, it touches everything. So that last case study, I'm just telling you now, it's a bear. Don't wait till the last minute to start that thing, because there's so many different, everything that you've done from last semester and this is represented in that last case study. That's why I give you a week off before you do it. And then after that, we'll do financial management. Most of that will be local school budgeting with Dr. Sain, and then I'll do sexual harassment, and that'll be a short one, but we'll open up the floor for other topics at the end. So, folks, we're in the short rows. You should be into your skip pretty heavily by now. When we get back from spring break, I will introduce. No, I won't. Week 12. Next week we'll do personnel. Week 12, when it's my week, on April the 5th, I will introduce the CAP. You can go ahead. The materials are in our shell. I'll introduce. Everybody should be getting to that. We'll talk about the CAP, which is school culture. And you use your parent survey from teacher survey from South Carolina, or your teacher working condition survey in North Carolina. You analyze 5 specific areas, just 5 of the 12. You don't have to do everything. You don't have to do managing student conduct unless you want to, but you got to do teacher leadership, school leadership, facilities, resources, and time. You got to do those 5. And we'll cover that on week 12, April the 5th. I will cover the CAP for you. Everybody is pretty deep into, everybody's finishing up the OMA. If you hadn't, you need to get that done this week and jump in the skip, because we're going to shift gears. And first week in April, we're going to shift over to the CAP here. Again, these are things you got to kind of do on your own, folks. I mean, I'll cover them for you, but you got to knock those out, because I know you got a lot of other stuff to do too. Sandra, you got a question?
Yes, I have a question about the entries in task screen. Are we supposed to do it like we did before and put the individual evidences in and submit them for review as well?
In task stream, we don't do any review in task stream. The only thing that's reviewed in task stream is when you put your artifacts in your competency folio.
Right. Well, I guess that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
The
don't call them
individual-
evidences. They're not evidences, they're artifacts. Evidences
So-
are what we put in the DRF portfolio.
Right.
AppSell, AppTel, SkipCap, OMA, PSYOP. Those go in the DRF portfolio. No comments in DRF portfolio. The only place we do comments is when you upload individual competency artifacts that go with the 21 competencies into your competency folio. That's what I'm talking about. We still got a lot of stuff to do. We won't talk about that until April the 5th. When I introduce the cap, that's the night. That means that you should be about done with your first two. That's when we go back and put our artifacts in. I will cover that night. That's past stream. You can see I have a very short. I have a very short night on managing facilities. That night that'll be a very short night, but we'll spend a lot of time on the cap and on competency folio. We'll do that night on getting your artifacts in there. So again, a lot of stuff to do this semester, a lot of coming and going, to and froing. This is your operations semester. You cannot just keep your head down and work on evidences all the time. You've got so many other activities that will help you so much when it comes time to apply and interview for these jobs. One of our December graduates, Wendy Youngblood, got a job this week at Dudley in Greensboro. And you know, you got to be prepared. The interview's harder than the job. Christina, tell them about your experience. You're still muted.
It started out as a casual conversation with the director of the school, just looking at my resume. And as we talked a little bit, they glanced down and they saw that I was in the program at Gardner-Webb. And then that just opened up a whole nother can of worms, because they knew that the students from Gardner-Webb are usually very prepared. So round one of the interview, it was just basically, tell me about yourself, blah, 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 blah. And so we went to round two of the interview. They factored in 2 people, and it got to be very, very intense. It was school law. And they were just firing those questions back and forth nonstop. And so they said, hey, would you like to talk to one of the board members? So it was the board member, the director, and then the president of the Charter School Association. And that one had me sweating. My armpits were sweating. It was situational questions, scenarios. What if a parent did this? And it was a lot of inclusion. So I'm glad that we had that class before I had that interview. And they wanted you to quote the laws, and they just came nonstop. And when I was just tired afterwards, it lasted for about 3 hours.
Yeah,
So,
I mean that's and it's all operation stuff, folks. What would you do? How do you do this? Have you talked to this person? Have you seen that? That's why I'm telling you, not because I teach this class, but I'm telling you, this is the most important thing. I mean, the evidences are important, folks, and you learn a lot about scheduling and these other things, but it's the totality of this course, how you operate a school. That's what they're wanting to know. Do you know how to run a school? That you're not.
One of the big questions at the end of the 4th interview, he said, so what if you don't agree with one of the policies that the school is asking you to implement? And so I thought back to class, and I had to fire it off very, very quickly. It's my job to implement the policies of the school, the state, and the federal laws. And he said, yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. And
And I told you that you'll get that question either first or second round every time, because they can't afford to hire somebody that's just gonna go wandering off into the wilderness and take them with them financially and legally. I'm telling you.
It was intense. And another question, they spent a very long time. How would I coach teachers? Do you plan to spend all of your time in the classroom? And, I remember you saying that teachers coach kids, admins coach the teachers, and that was the right answer. And they just moved on quickly.
That is correct. I'm telling you that don't think for a minute that there are not right answers to these questions when they ask them. They're not asking rhetorical questions. There are right answers. And that's the biggest mistake that people make in interviewing, is that they say, I hope I did good. And I ask them, what do you mean you hope you did good? Well, I talked and I said, but now, did you answer the questions correctly? Well, I mean, I gave no, there's a right answer to every question they ask you. There is a right answer. Now, you may not know it because, but again, you get it for this semester from all those operational things, going out and talking with your HR people, talking about talking with your principal, watching IAP meetings, talking to you. That's where you get that. Those are the questions they're going to ask you. It gets pretty, and yes, it is intense. Every level gets more intense all the way through, and Kristen can tell you that as well. That first one I told you, they'll just give it's just fun and games and all that, but then all of a sudden, when you get to round two, it turns, it turns serious on that round two, folks. You got to understand that. But if you're prepared, I'm not saying this to scare you in any way. I'm telling you, you know this stuff. The biggest problem 70% of people have that don't get jobs is they have imposter syndrome. They think that I'm not good enough, or why me, or I don't know. Jackie Tinsley is in the job right now. Jackie knows this stuff. Y'all are learning this stuff. You're as good as anybody. Whether you know it or not, Gardner Webb is the #1 rated program in North and South Carolina for a reason. You know this stuff. We put you through hell. I know we do. But I remember telling you that before you even came, that it was going to be 20 hours a week minimum. First night, told you. Get out now. If you don't think performance matters, if you can't devote 20 hours a week, this is not for you. There's plenty of programs out there that it's 3 or 4 hours a week. But you get 3 or 4 hours a week of preparation too. Now, I'm not patting myself on the back here, but folks, you are doing the work. You're paying your dues. You deserve what you get. No, you're not an imposter. You're as prepared as anybody at the level that you're at, and you just got to go in and know that, and don't be afraid. Yeah, it'll be tough, but you know this stuff. I know you do, and you deserve it. Kids deserve good people that work with them, and you deserve the opportunity to grow and develop. I mean, nobody should be able to take that away from you. You deserve that opportunity. You have earned that opportunity. So go get those jobs. They're out there. Go get them. Go get those. All right. So Sandra's group's going to go first, and who is it? Kim's going to go. Kim, or is Andalicia with you? So y'all are going to go last, and Sandra's going to go first, and we'll figure out who's 2 and 3. All right, kick it off tonight. I'm excited.
You're muted, Sarah.
Okay, so I will share our presentation. All right, so we have case number 3. We are normal 2 with Sandra, Jackie, myself, and Robin.
Okay. All right. For our introduction, we went into talking about what schools have to do for the rights of students. So we are putting here, schools must encourage inquiry and free expression, including personal opinions of students relevant to the subject matter being taught, such as school activities, services, policies, school personnel, and matters of broad social concern and interest. We also mentioned how the First Amendment protects students' expressions as long as they are not defamatory, obscene, or inflammatory. The avowed threat. And this was one of the questions that they asked about the about the parent making a avowed threat. So while she may not have intended to be a threat, it was not in the line with protecting the student. Because her asking the parents to speak sense was not the best approach. Like speaking sense into the boys to make sure that they don't show that they're I guess an item together wasn't the best thing to tell the parent to do. you know, as of today, all of our students are wanting to feel that they're comfortable enough to show that they can be with boys or they can be with girls. So her telling the parents to do that was not the best thing to do. So, and also she was trying to be the mediator, but her job was just to protect the student.
Okay, responsibility under the law. This was a tough case for me to read and process. I'm just going to tell you, it was just a tough case, Dr. Lamb. Title IX states that the responsibility is to protect the student's rights. Therefore, all school officials must recognize all students, regardless of their sexual orientation. This includes the right to be free from harassment and discrimination. And I want to preface what I just stated. It was difficult because I'm a parent, and looking through that lens, reading the case and trying to logically put together my thoughts of how, as a school administrator, how I should respond. I had some mixed opinions that, were not discussed during our meeting, but just as a parent, this one was tough for me. Next slide. So the correct response, she needs to let the concerned parents know that Title IX protects all students against bullying and harassment, and that no one at her school will tolerate it. In addition, students are protected by the Equal Access Act to be treated equally, no matter their sexual orientation. Then the principal needs to ensure that she is looking out for the welfare of all the students in her school. So the principal really, she had to advocate for her constituents, for her population, for her customers, and those were the students. So she made the decision, and she made the appropriate decision. Just as a parent, my thinking was like, so that's just an add-on, sorry.
All right, so the last question was whether or not the boys should be allowed to go to prom as a couple. And under Title IX, they have the right to attend prom, as do other couples. However, they must follow the same code of conduct as their peers. So just making sure that you treat everyone the same, PDA, holding hands, kissing, like what is allowed for one couple should be allowed for all.
So as far as bullying is concerned, we define bullying as unwanted aggressive behavior among school-age children that involves a real or perceived power imbalance. The behavior is repeated or has the potential to be repeated over time. Bullying includes actions making threats, spreading rumors, attacking someone physically or verbally, and excluding someone from a group on purpose. So the question is on the next slide, I believe, about is this a case of bullying, and how can we address and minimize the bullying and harassment within the school environment here? So some of the things we kind of put together a little list of things that the principal could do based on what the boys brought to her, but then also what the reaction of the community was. So the first thing that we thought was that there should be some communication with parents in terms of the fact that all students are protected under Title IX, and that consequences will occur if bullying takes place. So just to kind of set the tone that bullying will not be allowed, and that the principal's role is to protect all students under the law. To engage the SST team, so asking counselors, social workers, and psychologists to be on hand to discuss bullying and harassment, or just to kind of take the temperature of the school and to pull in students either way who may need supports. To consider involving the SRO to explain what bullying is and what cyberbullying is under the law. To allow for the Gay Straight Alliance to form and to give permission for students to form the club after school with a teacher sponsor. Because there may be other students in the school who feel the same way, but will not speak out. And just like you would allow other affinity clubs to form, to allow this club as well. And then to work towards having some sort of diversity day that includes all of the clubs in the school, that is student led, that celebrates students' cultures, genders, sexual orientation, races, that's led by various student groups. So all of the groups within the school can see how each other are feeling, what they have to offer, what they want to celebrate.
All right, so in conclusion, finding the proper balance between maintaining a safe and orderly school while safeguarding the rights of students is not a simple task. And often there are no existing bright lines to help resolve those dilemmas. In this case, the request of the students falls under the guidelines of responsible expression that Mary Lou's remarks about wanting them to wait until after graduation is misfeasance.
Very good. All right, I've got some questions. All right. What specifically was the negligence on the part of the school principal in terms of nonfeasance that kicked this whole thing off?
I think her misstep with the nonfeasance is she did not want to deal with it. Like, she keeps asking them, the parents, can they just put this off? Can you just ask your sons to not do this until after graduation?
That would be more of misfeasance. She did the wrong thing, didn't know it was the wrong thing. But there was nonfeasance negligence that started the very genesis of this problem. Lana, you got it?
So the problem is the relationship began to get out of control with PDA in the first place. And if
There you
PDA is
go.
addressessed, I'm out of high school.
Addressed.
I'm out of high school, and you got to keep a cap on it all the time.
You got to carry a
with
bucket of
every
water or a
group.
hose pipe with you all the time and throw water.
Absolutely, 100%, all the time.
All the time. I'll tell you quickly my story. I became a high school principal, senior high. I was a junior high, became a senior high principal. They said, can you go over there at summer school? We're having problems over there. They've got summer school over there. Got 1,600 students, 3,000 student high school. Got 1,600 of them in summer school. We're having awful problems. I went over there. We had 1,600 students, and they had on about enough clothes for about 400. I'm not making this up. They were wearing bathing suits, and I don't mean modest bathing suits, not the old timey. They were wearing bikinis. Boys weren't even wearing shirts, cut off shorts, trunks. I mean, it looked like they were at the beach, and kids having sex in the rooms. I mean, it was just out of control, just completely out of control. And before the school year started, I put out the dress code and warned them. And the first day when we stopped them on the bus, put them in the cafeteria and sent them home. I mean, if you don't, it gets out of control. The law of antecedent behaviors. Remember that one. The little things become the big things. They didn't stop the PDAs, and it stirred up the whole community. It got completely out of control, untenable. And then Jackie's exactly right. The next act of negligence was, I don't want to deal with this. That's misfeasance. Dealt with it improperly. All right. Heckler's veto. Heckler's veto is when you tell somebody, I'm going to take away your rights because somebody else might misbehave. You can't go to the prom because somebody might attack you. Well, you're punishing the victim. That's what heckler's veto is, letting the loudest and stupidest get their way. That's absolutely a veiled threat that something bad's going to happen to you. All right, what about her talking to these parents who came in about somebody else's child? Would that be a FERPA violation, you think?
That's FERPA violation.
Yeah. Didn't Dr. Sane tell us last week about in his school, 2 teachers were talking about a kid and the friend of one of the parents heard them, and next thing you know, they're in a lawsuit over that? I'm telling you, you can't be talking about other people's kids. Now let's talk about bullying. Do you think what those parents were doing was bullying? I believe I'd have called the resource officer. You're threatening these kids in my presence.
That was bullying.
Absolutely was bullying. Those parents were bullying. Absolutely. Now, here's kind of the bottom line on this case. And this, Sandra, I hope this helps your heart. This case wasn't really about LGBTQ or being gay at all. This is about any protected class of kids in our building. We can't allow them to be bullied, or any kids in our building. What if the parents that came and said, you know, you got Catholics. My mother came from Ireland as a small child, and she was in those times back in the 1930s. The Ku Klux Klan hated Catholics as bad as they did black folks, and made life miserable for them. We've gotten over that. But what if you got religious, or what if we're race, or we talked about religion last night. And Antoinette, that's in our in the class last night, is Muslim. Are we going to discriminate against them? I showed him the picture on my phone of my favorite doctoral student all the time, Razan Almani, who's Muslim and Jordanian. It was my job when she was at Gardner Webb to protect her, because everybody, Christian University, not everybody liked her, and she's the kindest and best person I've ever met in my life. I don't care what her religion is. It's your job to protect all classes of kids, whether it's gay or whether it's race or religion or EC, or it doesn't matter. This is a case about your job is to protect kids. You got to be a champion for who? You got to be a champion for kids, for children. And it could be any, I mean, this just happened to be LGBTQ, but this is not really about that. It's not about that lifestyle. It's not about ways. It's about your job is to protect kids. First thing this person did not act on PDAs. You knew it was going to get out of control. You had to know that. And then when it got out of control, she went the wrong way, put a little parent pressure. She folded like one of them tents you get with your Vic points over at the grocery store. She folded like one of them, first sign of trouble, and ended up bullying the kid herself. I mean, this is awful. But why I like this case, because sometimes we can acknowledge that it's okay not to bully certain things, but sometimes it's hard. There's certain things that touch a chord with all of us that we don't believe in our personal life or in our religion, but that doesn't matter. And that's just there to distract you. This is about this is about 14th Amendment. This is about Title IX. This is about protecting kids that need to be protected. That's what this case is really about. Will you do that or not? Or will you cave into parental pressure? Let the loudest and stupidest tell you what needs to be done in school? Or will you follow the law and do the hard thing, not the easy thing? That's really what this case is all about. But yeah, there were so many violations of law in this one. These were easy. These are the ones you got to be able to pick out. This was really easy stuff in terms of those kinds of things. But excellent presentation.
And if I could just say thank you, Dr. Lamb, for pointing all of those things out. The problem, the challenge that I was having as a parent looking out was what you were saying. Like, can somebody put a stop to it before it gets out of hand? And then for that principal to have to, then go do it. I was struggling with that part.
Yeah. Well, I mean, full disclosure, I sent the boy that I had back in the 90s that wore a dress. I sent him home. I didn't send him home because he was wearing a dress. His dress was too short. And I knew if I let him wear the short dress, all the girls were complaining that he was wearing shorter, and I'd let them wear it. That was the first hurdle I had to get over at that high school is PDA's inappropriate dress. I mean, it was just like a big love-in. It was like something from the 60s. It looked like Woodstock when I got there. But that was, and then they couldn't figure out why they couldn't get kids in class and why they had teen pregnancies, and it was just awful. It was just absolutely awful. And so I had a boy that wore a dress every day. But it's okay to wear a dress. It's just got to be, it's got to be down at the end of your fingertips, just like the girls got to be. We can't come just partially clothed. But now I didn't mind him wearing the dress. That wouldn't have been the thing that I would have wanted to done or one of mine, but I, you know, his only deal was if you wear your dress, I'll protect you. I won't let them bully you or do any of those things. You got to wear a dress long enough, just like the girls do. And you got to find it in your heart to love all these children. That's the hard part of this, and that's what this case is really about. Is you got to find it in your heart to be a champion for kids, even if you don't maybe agree with who they are or their lifestyle or some of their choices, but you still that's what you got to find within your heart. This is really an ethical case. That the legal stuff in this one's fairly straightforward. This is an ethical case. Well, do you have that ethic of care within you to care for and see about kids that you may not agree with their lifestyle? Can you do that? It's hard. I'm gonna tell you right now, sometimes it's hard. But now always remember, kids that need love the most usually deserve it the least. But you got to get over that part. You got to move on. All right. So that was group 4. Let's go. Who's group 3? All right, hit it.
Yes, sir. So case study 3, we are normal 2. Myself, Everlyn, and Allison Shelton created this PowerPoint. So we wanted to first start with the highlights of the case. So Jimmy and Willie want to be accepted as a homosexual couple. The boys noted that they had no intention of refraining from public displays of affection. So we're going to bring that up a little later, dealing with the PDA. And the boys' parents support them. The principal wants them to keep the relationship quiet until after graduation to avoid apparent boycott and negative publicity. Dealing with question number 1, would you consider Mary Lou's comments a veiled threat? Her comments were a veiled threat. She is required to follow the law and the student code of conduct. It seems as if she is trying to appease the community more than doing what is right in regards to the law. And then we talked about Title VI, which deals with the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It prohibits discrimination against a person based on their sexual orientation or gender identity. All right.
So this question is, what are Mary Lou's responsibilities under the law? So Mary Lou is required to follow the law no matter what pressure is being placed on her by the parents and or the students. So that's going to be both the Title IX and Title VI things in that one. The boys will be allowed to have the Gay Straight Alliance Club because, like as previously said by the other group, they can't just be singled out. If another group can have a group, they can have a group as well. Students should be granted the right to organize the Day of Silence due to their freedom of assembly rights, as long as they do not substantially disrupt the educational process.
So with question number 3, how should Mary Lou respond to the concerns of Jerry and Cindy Hudson? We felt that she needed to, pretty much let them know that, everyone will be allowed to attend the prom and it will not be canceled. And pretty much that, if they're not in favor of that decision, then their children do not have to attend the prom. And we talked about like how, again, the principal, she must follow the law and the student code of conduct. Of course, guidelines would need to be in place at the prom, with everybody, not just the boys, including that PDA. In the Ziminick versus Indian Prairie School District number 204 case, the courts held that a school that permits the advocacy of the rights of homosexual students cannot silence the views of students who hold a different view. So we brought that to mention too, like, yeah, you might have your viewpoint, but again, according to the law, everybody can attend the prom. And we also brought to mind, like, referring to another school district. We looked into the CMS handbook and it, talked about PDA, how it should be stopped for all students.
Right.
You want me to read that one?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Should Mary Lou allow Jimmy and Willie to attend the prom as a couple? They should be allowed to attend the prom so as not to violate their legal rights. And that also goes back to Title IX and Title VI. What you allow one set to do, you cannot stop another set from doing based on their sex, race, religion, things like that. So this is covered under sexual orientation because they happen to be a gay couple. And they also have the right to be a gay couple without being harassed in any form, whether it's from parents, students, or the principal.
And then the bullying and the cyberbullying laws, or what the principal needs to follow. The bullying, the principal has to follow the law and also has to follow the student code of conduct, use due process, and ensure that the staff is trained on how to report bullying. For cyberbullying, of course, also follow the law and follow the student code of conduct. Take into consideration where the cyberbullying occurred, who owns the device that it occurred on, and if the educational environment is being disrupted. The device that was used is immaterial. And then law enforcement is the one who has to do the investigation. That we are not in charge of that.
Now, please remember that one of the reasons why we want to get law enforcement involved with cyberbullying, especially if it wasn't a school-based machine, is that police have powers of subpoena to be able, and they can open phones and do things like that if need be. I've told you the case at the local high school where I live in Cornelius. There was a high school boy was enticing middle school girls to send him inappropriate pictures, and then he was using them to blackmail them to have sex. He's still in the penitentiary and will be for a while, by the way. Indecent liberty with minors, statutory rape. But you know, one of the APs that I trained was there, and he saw that and got the resource officer, and they were able to confiscate the phone before the kid could ditch it, and they got a court order and opened the phone and found all that. Which is basically child pornography. So, you know, every case won't be that. I get it. Every case won't be that, but some of them will be. And so, if it's not your device, and you see that, then you know it's good to have the police, and they can advise you on those kinds of things. Now, remember, in terms of search and seizure, you have more rights than they do, but you don't have the power of subpoena to open up cell phones like they can and different devices like they can. So you have to have a good relationship with your resource officer. If you don't,
Julian, can I ask a question?
be tough. Yes, Derek, please.
And I don't want to get off on a tangent, but we had something that happened here in Cumberland County, probably about a week ago. There was a situation where in one of the middle schools here, they were having a lot of issues with vape cartridges and jewels, and people bringing contraband material. And so they chose one Friday, not this last Friday, but the Friday before, to search every single student as they were coming into the building.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
you know why they did that? If they had picked people at random, they could claim that they were being discriminated against.
Okay.
And so now, one of the reasons why, by the way, metal detectors are legal. One of the reasons I like metal detectors is you get everybody, but you got to be careful on searches that you don't single certain people out.
Yeah.
And if you do everybody, then you can't claim that you were discriminated against or profiled or targeted. Would I do that? No, but I understand why they did.
I had some people ask me about it because they knew that I was in this class, and I said I'm pretty sure it was legal.
It is,
but I don't necessarily know that it was the best way.
It wasn't the ethical thing to do.
Okay. All right. Cool.
This is where your ethical and common sense has got to kick in. Is it legal? Absolutely. What they were trying to do was avoid a discrimination or targeting, or I was profiled or whatever. But it's too broad. That again, the ethics of profession. That this wasn't smart. No, it was not smart.
Who parked there?
Legal is different than smart sometimes. I would not have done that at all, but I know exactly why they did it. Now, I stopped that as a practice in CMS, by the way. I did not agree that we should be doing that. I also stopped a lot of just what they wanted to call random searches too. If you don't have reasonable suspicion, you need to leave people alone. We have a much lighter standard, as I've talked about. We don't have to have probable cause like the police, but we do still have to have reasonable suspicion. You can't just be harassing people because you want to. There's an ethical piece of this in terms of profession and human rights, how we ought to be treating people. That's a bad look. Legal as it can be, but a bad look. And you wonder why you lose parent community support, because you do dumbass things like that. And that's exactly what I'd have said to the administrators. You know, you need to wear a helmet and a sign if you're this dumb. You're just asking for trouble doing something like that. Yes, it's legal, but it's not ethical, and it's not smart. I hope that answers your question, Derek. That's kind of a touchy subject with me. That's just people being abusive with their power. That's all. That's really all that is. So you want to see me and the missus at the last year that I was high school principal? I have my prom picture. You want to see my prom picture? That's a day or two old, isn't it?
All right now.
That was before the turn of the century, folks. That's oldie but goodie there. Hey, Lordy. All right. Let me stop my share. We're ready for our next group. Hey, Lordy. So Kim's group's going to go last. So whoever the other group is that hadn't gone, it's your turn. All right. Who's sharing? Andrelicia said she's ready. Let's roll. Doodly doo 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 doo.
Okay. I guess we'll go ahead.
Okay.
All right. Can you guys see the screen?
Yep.
All right. Let's see if I can move this panel down. All right. So we had the case, case study 3, we were normal 2. This is Kim, Kelly, Andrelicia, myself, and Michael. Andrelicia is going to start us off. I can't get it to move. Are you guys there?
Yes, I'm waiting for you.
Okay. Let me see why it's not moving. Sorry, y'all. My screen is locked. Okay, there we go.
So I'm going to talk about a little background of the case study. Jimmy and Willie want to freely express their sexual orientation. Jimmy and Willie's parents support their children in expression. Other students uncomfortable with the public display of affection by LGBTQ students. Jimmy and Willie plan to attend prom together as a couple. Parents threatening to boycott school if principal does not intervene and stop LGBTQ students' behavior. Students collecting a petition to cancel prom if Jimmy and Willie are allowed to attend as a couple. Next slide.
Why it keeps doing it. Sorry, y'all.
Background continued. Jimmy and Willie's parents meet with principal who tries to convince them to wait until after graduation to make their relationship public to avoid problems. Parents see this as a veiled threat infringing on First Amendment rights on their children. Jimmy and Willie want awareness days and establish a club. They want a day of diversity. Is acceptable by law as a protection of the First and 14th Amendments. They are requesting a day of silence, cannot force all students to participate in silence for one particular group if it infringes on their beliefs, must be approved by the district if it impacts the instructional day. And they want to form a gay straight alliance club. Is allowed as a club by law, but must follow board policy, timeline, teacher sponsor for creation of any new club.
All right.
The first question is, would you consider Mary Lou's comments a veiled threat? Based on the First and 14th Amendment, Mary Lou needs to be wary of giving precedence up to the idea that others might be offended by Jimmy's and Willie's expression, and it will infringe on their first and 14th Amendment rights, because what they say or do is offensive to others is not legal. But when you respond that it may offend someone, that is illegal. The case also mentioned that she spoke to the boards while she wished to avoid a negative publicity. And because of the heckler's veto, people cannot be punished or denied their First Amendment rights for someone or something that may or may not happen. So the question is a valid threat? Yes, it is, because she is given warning as foreseen for Jimmy's and Willie's PDA during the disruption, being a disruption to the school, and she was trying to minimize the impact to the school and to Jimmy and Willie. At least the comments are not intentional veiled threats, but it infringes on their First Amendment rights.
So what are Mary Lou's responsibilities under the law? We put that under Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972 and the Equal Access Act of 1984, duty to protect the rights of all students forming clubs to ensure due process for all students. The First and 14th Amendments, freedom of speech and equal protection for these students. Complete due process and addressing the public displays of affection according to board policy and code of conduct for all students to make sure the school environment is safe and orderly for all students and staff, but also looking at FERPA, not sharing information about other students to the Hudson family. Although she can listen to the concerns of the other parents, she cannot discuss student affairs with any members of the community, which includes other teachers and or staff members. And then we just listed, and Imber and Van Giel, they had mentioned in their book that tension between the schools need to maintain an orderly environment and the student's rights as a citizen and human being, but also many of the most difficult questions in education law concern the conflict between the individual rights of students and then that balance between that and the corporate needs of the school. We also discussed the case of Tinker in 1969, discussing the freedom of speech can be restricted or limited if it disrupts or if it has the potential to disrupt school or invades the rights of others. While we felt that this between Willie and Jimmy did not cause any type of disruption at the school. And then we also brought in Bethel v. Frazier speech can be restricted or limited by school officials when expression is not disruptive, but is deemed lewd or vulgar. And we also just mentioned that PDA should have been addressed for all students in education and the environment by this point, regardless of sexual orientation.
All right, so how should Mary Lou respond to the concerns of Jerry and Cindy Hudson? We discussed that they should explain, first of all, explain to them that it is her job to ensure that all students' rights are protected, that under FERPA, the principal cannot speak to them about other students. It would be a FERPA violation for her to carry on any conversations about the two students in particular. Like Kelly mentioned in the last slide, she can listen to their concerns, but she cannot actually talk about the students under FERPA. We also talked about the heckler's veto. We cannot take away the rights of Jimmy and Willie because someone may be disruptive or feel offended. Under heckler's veto, sometimes you have to be careful about the idea that just because someone is offended, the person who brings about the offense shouldn't be the one who is punished. It's those who respond to the offense in more violent ways, or who, in terms of the response, how they respond under the heckler's veto. And Jerry and Cindy Hudson are threatening to boycott, and their actions, because they are offended, are causing more trouble than the actions of Jimmy and Willie in the first place. Barbara versus Dearborn Public Schools in 2003, speech cannot be suppressed by being labeled disruptive simply because it attracts attention or invites disagreement. And so all of these are things that Mary Lou needs to address with Jerry and Cindy Hudson.
And then we responded to the question, should Mary Lou allow Jimmy and Willie to attend the prom as a couple? And we were in complete agreement that absolutely they should be allowed to attend in accordance with district rules and procedures, just like all other students. We also discussed about how we should, we really would recommend to Mary Lou to delegate responsibility to her staff to review all the district rules and procedures with all the students and staff that are attending the prom, just to make sure that she's got her entire staff on board with what is and isn't allowed at prom. And then we kind of continued that discussion because there were these kind of comments from the parents about boycotting and petitions, and it's Mary Lou's responsibility to keep the prom experience safe. And so we felt like that definitely there should be security, and I'm sure there is there's security anyway, but to make sure that security is present and visible, just to make sure that all the students have a wonderful prom experience. And then we moved on to how principals should address or minimize bullying and cyberbullying. And here again, the principal's responsibility is to make sure that everyone is safe for all staff and for our students, and to train staff on board policy and procedures for the district, not only on how to handle bullying, cyberbullying, but also how to identify it, because that's a huge concern right now in our schools, is identifying the people who are being bullied and who is doing the bullying. We also know that it is vital that the principal completes due process and follows code of conduct consistently and fairly for all students in response to bullying and cyberbullying allegations. And it is vital that we take all those allegations seriously and that we act swiftly on those allegations.
And that's it.
I've got a couple things. Great presentation, by the way. If y'all had a better teacher, y'all just be doing great. I'm telling you, really good. Where is on my screen? Where's Kelly? I want to talk to Kelly a minute from Burns. Kelly, what do you do for a living down at Burns?
I am an instructional coach.
Digital?
In technology is
Yeah,
a specialty, yeah.
Yeah. Full disclosure, I don't know much about this, but where is there a place where we could use technology and digital communication to help us with problems like this? I was just thinking about that when y'all were presenting tonight. We always talk about digital and media like it's a bad thing and getting phones, but I've often wondered, is there a way that we could use it for good, not for evil?
That is a question that we have every single day. How do we use social media, technology, everything to enhance what our students are doing and not make it for bad?
Yeah. See, that would be something that I would be thinking about in a case like this, where they're using social media to bully these kids and parents joined in. Could we not counteract that by doing some positive things with social media, maybe? Seems like that would be, or I don't know. I tell you, I'm not up to speed on how we would do it, but it seems to me like that we've got people in this business that are smart enough and tech savvy enough that we could kind of fight fire with fire, is what I've often wondered. Because they're using social media against us, and what we need to do, the right thing. I think we got to have some people smart enough in our business to figure out a way to turn that around.
We're actually in talks with a lot of different companies trying to figure out how we can wrangle in our presence in social media, because our district prides ourselves on that.
Yeah.
If you look, we have a ton of social media presence between all of our students and our schools. If you look on every platform, we have great things going on across our district.
Yes. The last time I was physically in your school, I was most impressed. We've had a good history and a good relationship with Burns High School. And I know that there are some people out there smart enough. And you folks, as the next wave of administrators, that's going to kind of be your challenge, is how to direct social media for good rather than for evil, or it's going to eat you up. It's one or the other. But now you can't put the genie back in the box. You're not going to be able to take the people's social media away from them, their phones, just like ChatGPT and artificial intelligence. That's the calculator of my day. When calculators first came out when I was in high school, they wanted to ban calculators. Oh, that's cheating. No, now you can't take a math class without one.
Y'all are going to kill me, but as administrators, I actually encourage my teachers to use ChatGPT as well as TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, everything that the students are using.
We've got some folks at Gardner Webb that want to ban it, but we don't. I've already done several projects. I'm using a product called ChatSonic, and the reason why I'm using it to help analyze qualitative data with my doctoral students, I can turn the AI part off, where it will just find the themes in the qualitative, but it won't tell us what it means. And then the doctoral students have to know what they have to figure out what it means. But I'm using it. We're using it every day on things that we're doing at the doctoral level every day, where we're doing research, empirical research every day. It's just a calculator, folks. It's the calculator of this era. So again, we got to be able to harness this stuff. Banning it's not going to work, and the extension of that is banning gay kids is not going to work either. Now I'm going to tell you, I was born in the 50s. I was in school when we did integration in 66. I finished college in the 70s. I'm going to tell you what, folks, things were more open in many ways back then than they are now. We're not going to go back. People are not going to give stuff up. In the 70s, when we'd come home from college, nightlife in Charlotte, the Pterodactyl Club had a drag race back then, and then it went to Mythos Cafe, then it went to Cosmos. That was long before RuPaul ever thought about having a drag race. That's 50 years ago, folks. We're not going to ban people from being gay. We're not going to, and so social media can help us with a lot of this stuff, I believe. I believe that we can get in front of it with them if we're thinking and artificial intelligence. I think it can only be a good thing for our schools. again, we just got to be smart enough to harness some of these things, and we got to have the desire to protect and want our kids to do better. That's kind of where this one boils down to. And the safety piece on prom, on that piece, the reason I showed y'all that picture, I was going to wait till after the next presentation. That picture was from the last prom when I was high school principal, which was shortly after Columbine. And what we started doing was this was right after Erickson, which is now what, Panther Stadium opened in Charlotte. That's where that prom was up on in third floor on the club level. And one of the reasons why I moved prom over to Erickson Stadium, or now Panther Stadium, was for security. You know, we had death threats, and we had bomb threats and death threats every day after Columbine in high school. It was awful. It was absolutely awful. And we were worried about what was going to happen with our kids in prom. And the wonderful thing about Panther Stadium, you know what kind of security they got. Nobody's getting in that you don't want to get in there. And that's why we moved. We did it a couple of years there. It was great. But yeah, you got to look after, you got to protect your kids. You got to think outside the box. People thought it was just the most peculiar thing in the world that we would go to a football stadium to have our prom, and it turned out to be absolutely wonderful. The kids had the best time ever. They just loved it. I still have kids, all these years later, 25, 30 years later, that still, when they see me, they were reminded of that was the most fun they ever had. But again, I don't know how I figured that out. I just woke up one day and thought about it. I don't know. I was at the ball game and thought about, boy, it's a big, great place in here in the club area to have a prom, and talk to them. And next, we'd love to have you. You know what they charged me? Nothing. We did the prom for free there, other than the decorations that we had and the food and the things that we had. It was wonderful. But again, think outside the box a little bit and utilize what's there. Don't stick your head in the sand. You're not, insert metaphor here, but you're not going to get the genie back in the bottle. You got to use some of these things that are being used against us now. We got to turn them around and use them for us. That's the challenge of the next, that for your wave of administrators, is how to be smarter than my crowd was, which wouldn't be hard, but that's your challenge. All right, last group of the night.
I do apologize. My screen was.
Oh, you're good. We're rolling.
Freezing up. All right. I cannot see. It looks like. Hold on. All right. Here we go. All right. We have case study number 3. We are normal 2 with Naima Branch, Michelle Brunson, Kristen Carroll, myself, and Derek Crockett, and Christina Davis.
Okay. So, of course, the background, which all of us have given. I just wanted to say before we start that this case coming along at this time is, there are a lot of things going on, and it kind of makes you look at the whole LGBTQ issues, through a larger lens. So if Kristen, if you'll go ahead and go to the overview.
Oh, did it? I'm sorry.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. So, just like it says right here, Jimmy and Willie are close friends, but friendship has blossomed into a romantic relationship, and they were caught kissing and holding hands in the library. Parents began calling the principal, wanting her to do something about their relationship. They threatened boycotts and petitions for condoning this mockery of their religious heritage. Students started their own petitions to ban the boys from going to prom together.
All right. Was that it, Derek? I feel like I missed something. Is that it? Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So we are not going to insult your intelligence and read each and every one of these post-its, but like Dr. Lamb said earlier, this case had a lot of issues with it. So we kind of noted all of the big 6 of them, petitions going on, requesting them not to go to prom, parents planning a boycott, veiled threats to the boys. So this is just kind of the 6 of the things that we're going to look at during our presentation. Our book for our expected reading on page 100, nope, sorry. I think it was page 111. The guidelines suggested from chapter 5 take precautions to ensure that efforts to avoid controversy or disruption do not result in silencing or muzzling sides of issues. Personal views, student expression cannot be banned merely because it may conflict with personal views of the school. Evidence, when making decisions regarding student expression that is disruptive, the school officials must be able to establish proof of an imminent or substantial disruption. You can't just, like this, another group said, you just can't call it a disruption unless there's an actual disruption to instruction.
All right. Would you consider Mary Lou's comment a veiled threat? It was, because she told the boys to put their relationship on hold until after graduation. And she also mentioned to them that they would be endangered if they continued. Heckler's Law, the veto doctrine, which prohibits the government from restricting speech solely based upon the disruptive or violent reactions of the listeners or onlookers. She wanted to cancel the prom because she was afraid of what the parents would do or what would happen to the boys at the prom.
What are Mary Lou's responsibilities under the law? Well, she is supposed to protect all students. It does not matter if they are two boys or religion or anything like that. She's supposed to protect all of her students. She is supposed to follow FERPA. She ignored their right to privacy by talking to other families about the boys, emails she shared on the phone. She must give them equal access to the prom, just like everyone else, because prom is a school event, and that's Title IX.
And she might not be able to see it based on where her pictures are, but it also says enforce PDA rules for all students.
Okay, so how should she have handled the concerns of the parents? One, listen to their concerns, as we do with all parents, but she should never have discussed any information about another student because of FERPA. Explain the legal aspect of the rights of all students, not just those we choose to have rights for. And of course, give the parents the option that their child does not have to attend the prom if they have issues with anyone that's attending. So kindly tell them to mind their business.
Should Mary Lou allow Jimmy and Willie to attend the prom as a couple? Title IX states that no person in the United States shall, my baby's crying, to be excluded based upon their sex or be denied the benefits or be subject to discrimination under any education program that's receiving federal benefits. Heckler's veto is key consideration when dealing with free speech issues. Students' speech cannot be suppressed for the sole reason that someone may be offended or create an outburst in response to speech.
Okay, how would you address or minimize bullying or cyberbullying? Education is key. Administrators, teachers, staff, students, and parents must be taught. So many people are clueless about what constitutes bullying. So we have to understand it. Knowledge is key. Communication is key, and getting the community involved is vital. Schools and LEAs can have information sessions and bring all stakeholders into the conversation. Create an environment where bullying is the exception and not the norm. Get students involved in anti-bullying campaigns throughout the school. Let's see. And stakeholders must be involved in aggressive monitoring. Teachers have to be completely mindful of what is going on in the halls, in their classrooms. They have to be out. They have to be visible. Administrators have to be out. They have to be visible. They have to be mindful. but also it's not just, and I was thinking about this earlier, it's not just, it's not just teachers and it's not just administrators in the school. Students have to be empowered to bring issues of bullying to the attention of teachers and administrators. But then not just them, also custodians, people in the office, classified staff, they see things too. So we have to make them all feel empowered to bring those issues to the fore. People must be taught what to look for and who to turn to if bullying of any kind occurs. The school environment must be one where bullying is not ignored. And then this is just a map that talks about, it's a little hard to, it might be a little bit difficult to see, but it talks about different places throughout the country where there's legislation related to bullying, specifically as it relates to sexual orientation. There are some states that have laws that prohibit bullying based on sexual orientation. There are other states that do not. And of course, we know right now that we see that, a lot of states around the country are starting to change the conversation as it relates to LGBTQ issues. I guess it'll be interesting to see where that all goes.
All right, as far as ethical paradigm, the CARE, Mary Lou does not seem to be truly cognizant of the larger issues involved with as it relates to Jimmy and Willie. Then is their relationship any less valid because it is the same sex relationship? And what kind of harm is she doing by telling them they should put the relationship on hold until after graduation? And Mary Lou is not being mindful of the emotional and mental toll her actions could be causing these two impressionable young men.
We also looked at the ethical paradigm of profession. The principal is not using the professional code of ethics. She's also she's not keeping all students at the center of her decisions, and she's not promoting social justice.
Excellent.
Critique: the principal is breaking the law by talking to other families about the boys. If she cancels the prom because of the boys, Title IX prohibits of Education Amendment of 1972 prohibits discrimination based upon sex, including pregnancy, sexual orientation, and gender identity.
And for justice, she did not respect the rights of the students. All students have the same equal rights, and she ignored the request for the Day of Diversity. Again, it should be sponsored as in any other club that was offered at the school.
That's
Excellent.
it.
Excellent. Excellent job, all groups tonight. Vice group hit all the bases. Very good. I want to go back to something Derek said. Bullying. I'm afraid that we're being tarred by a brush now that school administrators are only putting up signs and paying lip service to stopping bullying. That's kind of the national conversation now, that we make all these rules and put up all these signs, but we don't really follow through and do anything. This is a case where this kid was bullied. These kids were bullied, but the administration sided with the bullies because it was most politically expedient. So the last thing that I'm gonna do tonight, and I should have already had this queued up, but well, pardon me for not having it. It won't take me but a second. Drew Shinneman is a national cartoonist. He's about the best one going now, and it hurts my heart. This is one of his latest cartoons, and we all should. It's a pretty simple cartoon. It'll take me a second to get back to it, but unfortunately, political cartoonists going back you know, a long time, kind of have the pulse of the country under their thumb and kind of know what the current feeling of a lot of things in the country are. And this is kind of this was his take on what schools are, or in this case, obviously not doing about bullying. School administrators, what more can we do? I mean, the sign is already pretty big. The national conversation right now is we aren't doing anything other than just putting up signs, and we aren't following through. This is a national. This is a national. Probably the most popular political cartoonist in the world right now. That hurts, folks. As a school administrator, I know I'm not practicing anymore, but that one hurts. Basically, what he's saying is we're not following through. We're not protecting kids. We're not making the effort. That's the national conversation right now. We're going to have to be exactly right, Evelyn. Evelyn, we're going to have to be proactive. We're just paying lip service, I'm afraid, some places. Yeah, it's Go Comics, Drew Shinneman. I'll put it in the chat right quick. Let me go back. Let me share my screen if I can get that right quick. But this one hurts, folks. I'm just going to tell you right now. This one hurts. Get out. This one was this month. But again, that's kind of the national conversation, and that's a really sad reflection on us.
I'd like to say something.
We got to change that. My point is you folks, your wave of you've got to do better than mine did. You got to do better. You can't just stand around and put up signs. Y'all got to do better.
I can tell you something that was happening at the elementary level when I was last at this one school. Each week they had a lesson, and Lana's kids came through this, and each week we had the classrooms had a class meeting, and they went over a bullying scenario and who was the hero, and they talked about, there's three positions in that situation: the person doing the bullying, the person being bullied, and the person who sees it. And do you say something, or do you do something? And that school was really working on empowering those kids to know it's okay to say something, that it's not tattling. And I think it's in my 24 years, it was probably one of the best programs that I ever saw being implemented for bullying.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. But you got to be proactive like that. I mean, we get that we should be doing Leader in Me and Character Ed and all those kinds of things. But on the other hand, we say we don't want bullying, but we don't really ever do anything. We've got to have some programs like that where we do those kinds of things. Where
Lana remembered the name of it, so she's put it in the chat.
Yeah, it has to come from Kelly's right. It's got to come from the top down. What do you prize in your building? You set the culture for your building. People will take their cues from you. Again, you're hired to follow law and policy and do the right thing. Derek brought up, searching everybody in a school while legal. That's just dumb. That's really an ethical. That's a really unethical breakdown. That's a cop out, is what that is. Again, we're bowing to pressure. We're doing symbolic things, which I don't like that kind of stuff. Those aren't substantive. We get no gains from those things. We gain very little. Yeah, Kristen's right. It takes the fun and the safety away. We're trying to make we're trying to make things better, not worse. Just stuff like that just makes things worse. That's just self-inflicted dumbassery. You need to avoid that at all costs if you can. All right. So be working on that last case study. It's a bear. And when we next meet in April, I will cover the CAP. Next week we're doing what we're doing HR with Dr. Sane next week. He's on a trip this week. He's working with school districts on EC. They're wearing him out on EC, but he'll be back with us next week. I want to thank all of you again. I'm very pleased. There's no caveats. There's no buts. I'm very pleased with all of your work. I'm very excited and very happy. Y'all are, again, if you had a better instructor, y'all would really be tearing it up. But I think you're all doing great. I'm very pleased. The case studies were marvelous tonight. I don't have to beat my hands on the desk and scream and yell and throw stuff. Y'all are doing a really good job, and I appreciate that. Sarah, you got a question?
Yeah, I actually just have a quick question about the skip for test 2.
Yep.
When we have to make the action plan, what's the difference between the short-term and long-term objectives?
Okay, short-term are things we're going to do for social media. Long-term are the events that we're going to have once we get them hooked. That's it. Short-term is how in the world are we going to get hooked in with these people through social media so that they'll know what we're doing. And then once we make that connection, then we use that connection to have events at our school, family math night, family reading night, family inclusion night, where they learn about our EC program. That's going to be the big thing. That should be one of your suggestions in the last case study is, boy, do they need an inclusion night. They got parents over there burning the building down over in the inclusion model in EC. Well, I'm betting they didn't have a parent night. They didn't communicate well with their parents, and they didn't have an EC night of some sort. That's kind of what we're doing here.
Okay, and then what's the formative and summative?
All right, always the formative is think of formative F at fidelity. Formative is you go out and check and make sure people are doing what they're supposed to. Summative is, did it work? That's the results at the end. But formative assessment is always a fidelity check. If I tell Kimberly Sparks I want her to be teaching math tomorrow and I don't go check on her, how do I know Kimberly's going to be teaching math tomorrow? I mean, I got to go check. I mean, that's, I go check. Is she following the script? Is she following the standard course of study? Is she following the pacing guide? That's a formative assessment. A formative is not to give the kids a test halfway through the year and summative tests at the end of the year. No, formative is of the adults. I always think about that. That's a check on the adults, what we call fidelity checks. Are they actually teaching today? Are they in there showing films and sleeping? That's how are you going to make sure that whatever plan that you got is actually being implemented? If we say that we're going to start a Facebook account, how are we going to find out? I mean, what are we going to do to check, make sure that happens? Who's going to be responsible and how are we going to check it to know if it's happening or not? One of the things that the administrators make, especially emerging administrators, neophyte administrators, they think if they write it down and tell people to do it, that they will. No, that doesn't happen in the real world. You got to go check it and make sure it happens. Fidelity checks. That's great questions, by the way. All right. Thanks. Somebody said something nice about me. That's all untrue. I appreciate the kind words. All right. I'm excited. I had a good night. We got done right on time. I told you we'd only be here an hour and a half tonight. Kudos. Everybody did a great job. I'll see you next week.